Hey everyone, Future Matteo here with just a little quick update. This episode was recorded prior to the announcement of the upcoming Pokémon Presents, and also recorded before we had an official date for the Nintendo Partner Direct, as well as the rumors of the Switch 2 getting pushed into next year. So with that, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode because most of our predictions are still pretty relevant. So anyways, on to the episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Hub World Podcast. Today's episode will have us covering Nintendo predictions over the next couple months. My name is Matteo, and today I'm joined by
Gino and Gules.
Whether you're joining us from YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, be sure to like and subscribe. Now, let's get this episode rolling. So, if you haven't heard, there's a lot of very interesting Nintendo rumors going around. Depending on when this episode drops, the Nintendo Direct that's rumored to be happening this week may have already happened. And then also, there's a few other things that we are expecting to happen this month, such as the inevitable Pokemon Presents that'll happen on Pokemon Day at the end of February. And then into next month, we have the rumored Nintendo Switch successor announcement. So there's a lot to cover in this episode, so I guess we'll start just quickly with this rumored Nintendo Direct partner showcase.
If I'm being honest, I know the rumor right now is that it's a partner showcase, but I want to operate under it could be a regular Direct as well. And I want to make predictions of if it were to have Nintendo games as well, what would be in there. But if it is a partner showcase, two things I'm hoping to see are another look at the Dragon Quest III 2D HD remake that we haven't seen in like 3 years.
I forgot that was actually a thing still.
Yeah, I'm hoping we see that, and then maybe a Chrono Trigger 2D HD remake. I'd love to see either of those there, and Square Enix usually throws some things into Nintendo's partner showcases in any case, so I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something from them.
And like just because it's a partner showcase doesn't mean that there won't be Switch exclusive games from Nintendo franchises, because Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity was unveiled at a partner showcase. And I think Cadence of Hyrule was also. So
Yep.
There is a slight chance or an outside chance of, actually seeing a Nintendo game made by another team. Mario and Rabbids was shown at one, Mario and Rabbids Spark of Hope was shown at one. So I don't feel like now is the time for a first-party Nintendo franchise to be in one of these because we're so close to the next system coming out, and I feel like that would be a big thing to show with the new console.
Yeah.
But as for just like third-party stuff, I really am just waiting for Playtonic to announce their next game. I appreciate what they do for indies with the Playtonic and Friends label where they publish other people's games for them. That's great, but enough is enough. It's been so long. It's been like 4 years since Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, maybe 5 years since then, because I think that was 2019 that game came out. And I've seen a lot of the fan base getting a little bit tired of waiting now. Like 5 years is a long time. They have to be able to show something at this point. Like they've expanded their staff. They moved into a bigger space and they're a little more active on social media now, and they're a little tongue in cheek. Like I just saw a video that they posted on YouTube, and the community manager was a little bit coy with some of the comments, because a lot of the comments in this video were like, "Where's the next Playtonic game?" And they were just saying, "Oh, we'll show it when we show it." Like very similar to the way Rareware from back in the day in the N64 era was, where like they would just go radio silent for years and then show something when it was a year out. So I'm just hoping that we're really close to the next Yooka-Laylee or whatever actual Playtonic game is, whether it's like a kart racer or another platformer.
It is a Yooka-Laylee game. They announced it in 2021.
It's just tired of waiting, because I loved both of their games, and now I have so much faith in that studio. So there's that, and also what's that other game that was announced at the last Direct? It was made by the Sonic Mania team. Penny's
Oh, the yo-yo game.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
game looks really, really fun. And I'm blanking on the name right now, but that game looks great. I'd love to see more of that.
And he's big breakaway.
That's the name of it. Yeah, so just those are the two main games I want to see more of. So
My stuff is more on the Pokemon side of things. So if Jules, do you want to say anything about any Nintendo stuff before I can go in and start talking Pokemon?
I still have lots of Nintendo stuff I want to say before we jump to Pokemon Presents, if I'm being honest. Because I've only really talked about partner showcase stuff. Even though I know we're at the end of the Switch's lifespan, the reality of a new console launch is there's not going to be an install base immediately. And I do think we have a few more games left. I don't think we have anything brand new, but I am anticipating that we're going to get stuff. Like, of course, we're going to get more info on Luigi's Mansion 2's remake and the Paper Mario Thousand Year Door remake when they're ready to show those. However, I think we're going to get more stuff like that. I wouldn't be surprised if we get like one-ish more kind of remake slash re-release to end off Switch's lifespan. Maybe that's going to be, like
Like the Zelda remakes that we missed from the Wii U.
I think at this point those aren't coming to Switch. I think those will be on the successor.
I'm thinking more like Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 3.
Yeah, I was thinking the trilogy.
Metroid Prime 2, Metroid Prime 3. The other one, actually, I was thinking about this a lot the other day. And it's funny that we bring up Metroid. Because, like, I don't think it won't be a trilogy, right? Because they've already released Metroid Prime Remastered.
Yeah.
It'll be more like the Pikmin 1 and 2 package. So it'll be like a Metroid Prime 2 and 3 package. They'll probably do a physical release. And it'll be that type of remaster where it's really just up-res. But I was thinking about it, like, a lot. And I was like Metroid Prime 2 and 3 I think is a given, but considering how much they've spent, how much time they've spent building to Metroid Prime 4 in the Metroid story, right? Like cuz Metroid Prime 3 ends with the cliffhanger and then Metroid Federation Force ends in a cliffhanger that continues
game.
that cliffhanger. So it's very clear that Silex is playing a massive role in Metroid Prime 4. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get a Metroid Prime Hunters remake as well.
That'd be so awesome.
Because that's another kind of game like Luigi's Mansion, Right HD, or Paper Mario, where like really the game itself isn't packed with content. It is a very small game. And remaking or remastering that game probably wouldn't take a ton of time. So that could also be an end of Switch lifespan kind of game. And the thing is, and we'll talk about this when we talk about the new console, I'm sure, as well, but the rumor right now is it's backwards compatible. So at the end of the day, all these late game Switch games that might be remakes or re-releases or whatever, it's not like you're not going to be able to buy them for the next system. Like
Yeah.
most likely you will be able to, and I'm sure that even if you can't, that's why they're doing games like Luigi's Mansion 2 HD and Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, because so for example, for the average consumer who doesn't already own a Switch that wants to upgrade to the new Switch or buy a new Switch, or if it's not backwards compatible and the average consumer wants to upgrade to the new Switch, and then they're going to lose their games, like get rid of their Switch, most people aren't going to be super upset that they missed out on Peach, Luigi's Mansion 2 remake, and Paper Mario Thousand Year Door remake, because they are like older games. They're not like fresh, brand new games. Whereas if they drop something like a brand new Kirby game suddenly at the end of the Switch lifespan, and then somebody's like, oh, well, I want to buy this new system and I'm getting rid of my Switch and it's not backwards compatible, they might feel more burned. So I think we're either going to get backwards compatibility, or a lot of these late game Switch games will have releases on the next console as well.
My whole thing is like, I don't think Nintendo is just gonna stop making Switch games, even into year 1 and year 2 of the successor, because like the 3DS was on life support until 2017. It got games. They didn't want to completely unplug that install base, right? Like there's 140 plus million Switches in the market. There'll be even more by the end of this year. I think they're just going to slowly phase out that system. Like a lot of games that come out on the successor might have pared down versions for the original Switch, or they're just going to release Switch games that will be available to play via backwards compatibility on the successor. Like I don't think they're just going to completely rule out making games for the Switch, because I just that's just it's just money left on the table. Like, it'd be smart for them to just keep putting out remakes or re-releases or things like that, and then just let players on the new console still be able to play those games. Like, I think that would
Yeah.
just be the best decision.
I think we're naturally moving into the next console talk, so maybe we do that and then go to Pokemon. But I think whether it's backwards compatible or not, I'm of the opposite opinion of you, Matteo. I there's never been a time where Nintendo didn't do a hard transition. And 3DS you are bringing up is a good example, but I personally am ignoring that as an example because I don't think Switch was a successor to 3DS. I think Switch was a successor to Wii U. And I understand that in a way it is a successor to 3DS, but I think because it was the first time that they were pushing their handheld market into their console market, they had a little bit of a softer transition for them. But in terms of console, they've never done it, right? Like with Wii to Wii U, for example, there were no first party Wii games within 6 months of Wii U. They just shut it down.
Yeah, but Nintendo consoles in general, after I want to say every single Game Boy or DS was backwards compatible with at least one version of it before.
Yes,
Same thing with, the consoles took that after, the Wii was the first home console that was backwards compatible, right?
But regardless of whether it was backwards compatible or not, even with their
Yeah,
handheld division,
those older games will still work, but they're gonna
no,
go.
no, no, yes.
I'm no Jules. I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah,
Everything is gonna they're gonna say nope. This is the new thing. Buy the new
yeah.
thing. Nintendo's always been like that, but they're gonna say if you still have the old thing, you can play it on the new thing.
Yes, and I think that if they were going to continue to be releasing games on Switch, this first half of the year wouldn't be what it is. The first half of the year being majority remakes and very small games, I
Yeah,
think is very indicative that it's a hard transition, not a soft one. Because if they were just going to do this dual kind of piece, then there would be no reason to not release some bigger games right now, because it's okay, well, it's just going to have a version on the other Switch and they were going to ease people into it, whereas I feel like they're not easing people in. I feel like they put the writing on the wall after Tears of the Kingdom, and they're basically after Tears of the Kingdom, everything after Tears of the Kingdom has been in general a smaller game, save for maybe Pikmin 4. But even Pikmin 4, before it actually succeeded the way it did, Pikmin was fairly niche. So I feel like they basically looked at Tears of the Kingdom as this is the last massive game. Pikmin 4 was the start of kind of the phase out of smaller titles slash remakes to kind of phase people out. So you still have something to play till the new system, but it's not going to be anything massive, because the console will likely launch with at least a few heavy hitters. That's going to be their holiday. They're probably going to have 2 to 3 heavy hitters. If it comes out in September, like the rumors are, it'll launch with something big, and then there'll be a big November game.
Do you think that we're gonna have a smaller Pokemon release with Pokemon Day and everything coming up, and with all the rumors talking about a new Legends game or a remake of Gen 5 or Let's Go Gen 2? Because I've been hearing a lot of rumors about that kind of stuff, and I'm not so sure if they would just hold off until and wait until this Switch 2 or Switch Pro or whatever, right?
Let's put it this way. I think if Pokemon Day comes and goes and they don't announce a Switch Pokemon game coming this year,
Then yes, 100%.
yeah, there's no way that's not going to happen. There's no way they're not going to announce the big thing
Yeah.
coming out this year on Pokemon Day. And the Nintendo event or the unveiling is in March. I'm sorry, I really think there's a new Pokemon game being announced for Switch at the end of the month. It's just
No, I agree. I think Pokemon
that,
is the outlier.
even on 3DS, right? They also announced Ultra Sun, or Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon came out after the Switch came out or something like that, right? So
Even before that, even predating that, I'm pretty sure that I might be wrong, but even I'm pretty sure that Pokemon games have always historically their final releases on every console have always been either incredibly close to the next console release or like overlapping,
Yeah.
and that's just because of Pokemon's
Their
like
development cycle.
their development cycle. And that's why I do think like I know there's lots of rumors going around about what it is. It's not Gen 10. We're not ready for Gen 10 like in
It's not.
terms of
That's not going to
a year
happen.
cycle, but they wouldn't do that as the last Switch game. But I'm also of the opinion that it's a remake. I don't even think it's a Legends game. I think that Legends Arceus was such a massive success and such a massive piece of Pokemon's identity moving forward that if they're going to do a sequel to that game, it's not a Switch game. That is a Switch successor game. I think that whatever we're getting is either a remake, or it's something small, or it doesn't exist. So I think that if the next Pokemon game is a Switch 2 game, I think that what they're going to do on Pokemon Day is do their typical here's what all our mobile games are doing in Pokemon Unite, and then announce a few little things.
They'll give us a teaser trailer.
No, not even a teaser trailer. I could see them straight up being like, tune in March at the Nintendo console unveiling to see our next Pokemon game. Like, I think it's if it's a Switch successor game,
A launch
they
title?
will say on like yeah, no, well, not necessarily it's a launch title. If it's a Switch successor game coming out this year, I think on Pokemon Day they will say tune in to the console unveiling to see the next Pokemon game. Because that's where they'll show it. They won't show it on Pokemon Day if it's a successor game.
The Pokemon Company generally has been doing a lot of their own announcements and stuff. They haven't really been
And
doing them
Nintendo,
directs.
there's no way Nintendo would announce their showcase in a Pokemon Day presentation.
No, I think it'll be announced before then. At that point, is what I'm saying. Is like they might announce it at the end of this partner direct, right? Like Gino said, like they might say, "Tune in next
I
month."
don't even think they do that.
Or they'll say, "Stay tuned for updates on our next major Pokemon game, like next month," something like that. Because I agree, Pokemon Company does their own thing, but Pokemon Company
Yeah.
is not announcing the next console, and they're not going to show the game if it's running on the next console before Nintendo announced their next console.
And I really think Nintendo's announcing the whatever thing in March on Twitter. No one's going to tune into the partner direct. If it's announced to be a partner direct, you're going to see the numbers, the live stream numbers are going to be way down. General directs pulling way, way, way more people. Like they'd be better off just announcing it on Twitter.
Either way, I don't think the Pokemon game is going to be a Switch successor game because I don't think the Pokemon game that's coming is a brand new gen, and I feel like they're going to want to start with a brand new gen on the next system.
Yeah. Can we talk about like what we would like to see? Because like there's, as I mentioned before, there were like 3 big theories and stuff that I've been seeing floating around on YouTube, and it's like YouTube's been pushing that kind of content on me. Like, okay, next Pokemon game, is it like a Legends set in the Johto region, or is it going to be like a Legends game set in Unova? Personally, I would love to see a Legends game set in Johto, just because. Which game had the Sinjo ruins in it? Was that Heart Gold Soul Silver?
That's
they had
Gold
the-
Soul.
Yeah, that's how like people were saying, okay, maybe it's like your same protagonist from Legends Arceus, and you're going to the Johto region through the Sinjo ruins, and then that's how you can still tie Arceus into it, and then it can go into like the Johto region and stuff that way. I like that idea, or like a Black and White 3. And just leave that as like it's instead of a remake, it's just like, okay, here's just a sequel, and you can see True Kyurem.
Don't get me wrong, I would love a Legends Johto. I don't think that's happening personally. Like I think that it's something they may do down the line. I just don't see a purpose to doing a Legends Johto right now because there's no Johto marketing coming up. So I personally do think it's going to be something more connected to Gen 5 or Gen 6, which are the predominant theories beforehand. But if it is Johto, I think it will be Let's Go, because Let's Go has, sold very, very well, and they never really continued it.
Yeah.
And I think it's the perfect time to do Let's Go.
So Jules, you're saying it would be Let's Go Shuckle and Let's Go Dunsparce?
Yes, Let's Go Shuckle, Let's Go
Team
Dunsparce.
Shuckle. Team Shuckle.
But like, here's the thing, and this is going to be an unpopular opinion, maybe not here, but online. And this isn't something people want to hear, but it's something that they need to hear. And I had this conversation with Giancarlo when we were talking about Pal World. And I'm going to bring Pal World into this conversation. At the end of the day, people are really excited about Pal World, and they're using it as a way to criticize and point fingers and pinpoint things that Pokemon hasn't been able to do since it became HD, right? And another one I hear constantly compared to Pokemon is Persona 3, or just Persona in general. And they're like, well, there's no excuse. Look at Persona, right? And now that we're playing Persona 3, I kind of had this thought, like amidst the Power World hype and the Persona 3 release, I've been playing Persona 3, and it's a beautiful game. The animations, like the characters, so detailed, so beautiful, like all this stuff, and it runs at more than 10 frames per second, unlike Scarlet Violet. Fine, I get it. But I was also playing through Persona 3, and I was like, okay, let's just do like a quick comparison of like what they had to build versus Pokemon, right? So I looked at like, okay, the amount of moves, and I looked at the amount of moves. I'm like, there's literally like, if you count all the variations of like each elemental attack, there's like 30, maybe 40 moves, so that's 40 animations. There's maybe like 30 to 40 enemy types that are all reskinned and recolored as they get stronger. And then there's under a dozen playable characters that have animations designed for them. And the game reuses assets like over and over and over again. And so I was thinking about that. I was like, these aren't even quantifiably comparable things. Like the amount of just individual monsters Pokemon has to make mixed with the amount of moves and animations is astronomical compared to Persona 3. So these aren't equitable. And I was thinking about Power World too, and I was like, a lot of people really like Power World because of how it runs and the animations and all that stuff. But again, Power World has like just over, I think it was like 150 monsters. So I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about Let's Go, and I was like, people criticized the crap out of Let's Go when it came out. But Let's Go is the most polished, best looking, and best representation of the Pokemon and how they behave of any Switch Pokemon game. And why is it? It's because Game Freak has been telling us for like 10 years now, it's unsustainable how many monsters we have. If you want these games to look and run beautifully, if you want them to have the quality that they've had in the past, you have to let us cut down the amount of monsters. And everybody's sky is falling, sky is falling. Pokemon Company cutting content, whining. And so they kept a decent sized number again, 500, but that's still like an overwhelmingly large amount of monsters and animations to have to program, and their games are suffering for it. And that's why I'm excited for the idea of Let's Go Johto, because I like Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, and the reason I like it is because the game runs well, it looks well, the Pokemon have a lot of heart, a lot of care put into them. They went through every single one of those Pokemon. They're like, how do we make them look and behave the way that they authentically should in this game world? And the game works because of that.
I still think some of the battle animations were kind of lazy, though.
Sure, but battling wasn't the focus, right?
When it was just like generic, like tail whip, and it's just like the Pokemon, like literally just levitating, turning 180 degrees, falling, wiggling, levitating, turning around, and falling again. Yeah, in general, though, Jules, I do agree that the game performs very well, and for what it was fun, and it was a good return.
But the thing is, at the end of the day, I understand where you're coming from, but I think Pokemon's under a microscope because I'm sorry, there's nothing special about Persona monster using Makaraja and a circle of energy appearing around you and lowering your defense, and every single individual enemy having the exact same animation, doing the exact same thing you're describing in Pokemon.
Oh yeah,
but it's okay because it's Persona,
yeah,
and it's okay because it's Dragon Quest. And it's okay because it's Power World. But the second it's Pokemon, because Pokemon is the biggest media franchise of all time, it's not okay. And that's what I don't like about
and Game Freak essentially is the size of an indie team.
And that's fine.
The problem. They just have millions and millions and millions of dollars, and everyone thinks because of the millions of dollars, that means it's okay to shit on them.
Yeah, and there's lots of issues with Pokemon Company, but I think they are always their best when they've made the games that they want to make. And I think that what they've been struggling with is they don't want to upset fans too much, so they've prioritized the one thing that fans have screamed and cried about, which is Dexit. And they shouldn't have. They should have put their foot down and been like, no, our games, we don't want them running at 10 frames per second, so we're going to have 200 Pokemon in this game. But then it would be the same thing. People would cry. This company's lazy. They suck.
They just need to give us a battle sim that has everything. Make a
Maybe.
battle sim that has everything, and then you can go out and add to your battle sim roster by buying the latest release.
Sure. Then that would be great. But again, it's going to run into the...
It would solve a lot of problems because you don't have to have a running around in an open world and a windmill spinning at 2 frames a second, whatever. It's just here's the battle sim. Maybe even make it pixelated because Heart Gold and Soul Silver were completely 2D. They had 500 Pokemon, and that was the best game they've ever made. I do feel like some of the Pokemon pixelated look way better than their 3D models. Weavile is the biggest sufferer of the 3D.
100%.
Especially shiny Weavile.
Well, actually, Weavile isn't the worst. Electros is a big one too, and that Swellow. But like, there's a lot of Pokemon that suffered from the transition 3D, and I agree with you. Which is why I think if they ever do a battle sim or like a place where you put all your Pokemon and it continues on forever, they need a timeless art style. It doesn't need to be pixelated, but if they did something, for example, like Digimon Survive did, where it's hand-drawn animations.
Like the OG 151 drawn like that?
Not even necessarily like that. It doesn't need to be like that. But if it's almost like a moving anime, so it is like the same idea as sprites, where it's not like a super versatile 3D model, but it's like a moving hand-drawn image that has some little animation, so it's like emulating the pixel style, but it's more like hand-drawn. I think that is their best bet to make it timeless, because that's an art style that you never have to update. It's like Wind Waker, right? Like, no matter how good the tech gets, Wind Waker will never have to be updated beyond Wind Waker HD, because you can't update it beyond that unless you make it more realism. And there's no reason to make it realism because it's stylized. And I think if they did a
Very clearly a
Pokemon
cartoon, yeah.
Yeah, like if they did a Pokemon battle sim, making it a timeless art style that you'll never ever ever have to toy with after you've added the Pokemon in there, then it's forever, right? Like it can just
Yeah.
stay that way.
And I think if that's the course of action that they would go with, the Ken Sugimori art style that they've been doing since the original games, like the watercolored sort of hand drawn thing you would see in like instruction manuals and stuff, that's perfect. Like that would work. So anyways, just to recap, because a lot of Pokemon stuff has been said. Gino, you think that like they should make a battle sim, and Jules, you think
I think it's a remake. I think it's a Let's Go Johto, or it's a Gen 5 remake. And that's their main series game. But I also do think, like, I fully believe there is a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers remake that's coming out this year too, and that's also going to be a Switch game.
My hope is if they do a Let's Go Johto, I really like Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, but I wish there was a little more freedom in the control style of that game. Like if they gave me the ability to just play a basically remake of Gold and Silver, even if it's not like with all the stuff that Heart Gold, Soul Silver added or whatever, just like a 3D remake of Gold and Silver, just like how Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee was a 3D remake of Yellow. I would really appreciate that. Like, I didn't care throwing the Pokeballs like the Joy-Con or whatever. Like, if they can just map that to buttons, I'd be over the moon. If not, it's all right. But like, I'm sure that if that game does get made, there'll be a lot of quality of life improvements over Pikachu and Eevee. So, but like, I would even just love another Pokemon spin-off, like another Pokemon Snap on Switch, or like a new Pokken tournament. Like that'd be amazing if they made a new Pokken. But like, I want like those really high quality spin-offs. Another big announcement that they could just make would just to be putting the Game Boy games on Switch Online. That would be a huge win if they did that.
You think they'd do that this late though?
But the thing is, it's not late, because if Switch Online onto the persists in the new system, then like our whole idea of how Nintendo like drops these games is completely changed. Like it's not going to be seen as them sort of pulling the plug on one thing, but they would just keep going, because like those data mines, there was like 38 N64 games or something like that in the data mine, and we're nowhere near that. They just finished releasing all the games that they announced, I think in 2022, with I think Golden Sun was the last one. We don't know anything coming to Switch Online, and there has to be stuff coming this month, because there's always stuff coming every month. So where are these games? I really think they're just going to keep going.
When Microsoft announces their stuff and there's a partner showcase, they're going to announce stuff like Banjo
Diddy Kong
Tooie and
Racing.
Diddy Kong Racing. Um,
That'd be
but I
so
was going to
awesome.
say another thing I kind of want to mention. It was something you said earlier, but now that it's kind of relevant to Pokemon, you're saying like another big Pokemon spin-off. Another like maybe this is just jumping to conclusions, but a game we haven't seen from Nintendo in a little while that could pop up in a partner showcase or in a Pokemon Presents is another collab with Team Ninja on another Warriors game. And I think Pokemon as a Warriors game would be fantastic. I think a Pokemon Warriors would be crazy good. One, like it would be really fun and it would fit, right? Like it could be really, really cool.
Yeah, as the trainer, you go into the rock tunnel and you have to fight hordes like billions of Zubats.
Yeah, it could really work if they did. I think a Pokemon Warriors would really, really work and could be really unique.
Koei Tecmo made Pokemon Conquest on DS.
Yep.
So you could just do a 3D version of Pokemon Conquest.
You could. The game didn't sell super well.
No, but like it could
So
be a Warriors game, and like the style of the game is like it's the
oh, it was like
feudal
Pokemon Conquest.
Japanese
Yeah, so you
character with a Pokemon and with
Yep.
Muso gameplay.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely an option, and I think that what they've been doing really well because like when we first played Hyrule Warriors, when that was like the first one, and Fire Emblem Warriors, they were okay. Like I love Hyrule Warriors, but like it was a bit rougher on the edges. But what they've really mastered with these newer Warriors games is blending the original game's setting, vibe, and gameplay with Warriors. Like Persona 5 Strikers, Age of Calamity, and Fire Emblem 3 Hopes are all fantastic in the sense that they feel authentically like a Warriors and the game that they're emulating. So I think a Pokemon game could be really, really cool if they find a good balance. And the other series that I think would really do well with a Warriors game would be Xenoblade. And this is the perfect time to do a Xenoblade Warriors game because we're in the cusp, we're like in between the sagas because 1, 2, and 3 were one story. So they could easily blend them together and do a Warriors game now. And that could be a great late Switch game because all 3 Xenoblade Chronicles games in that saga are on Switch. So it could almost be like an epilogue to the Xenoblade 1, 2, 3 storyline in a Warrior style. And I think a lot of people would like it and people would buy it. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Warriors game this year or next year. Kid Icarus is another one that would be great as a Warriors game, but I don't think we're getting that
Or
till
even
we get
Kid
another
Icarus
Kid Icarus.
Uprising coming to the Switch, just in general as a remake. That'd be good. And just translate the touch controls.
We know that Namco Bandai or Bandai Namco, I always forget which order the things are in because they flip-flop, created 2 exclusively Nintendo studios. One of them is a Smash Bros team. It's incredibly obvious that they're a Smash Bros team, but the other one is working on something. They've been working on a 3D action game for, I want to say it's 2 years now, maybe 3.
Yeah.
And people are speculating it's a remake and like things being thrown around where Kid Icarus Uprising, Star Fox Assault, Star Fox Adventures, like people are thinking that it's like one of these older Nintendo 3D action games. I'd be happy with any of those, but I really want Kid Icarus Uprising because like
Yeah, that was
that
such a fun
game
game.
is painful to play for some people, not because of it being bad. It's just the way it controls, especially if you're left-handed.
If I'm
So
being honest, I think like, and this is my 2 cents about Kid Icarus Uprising. It's my hope and also my thought. I think making Kid Icarus Uprising like a remake of it, a late Switch remake, is a bad idea. And the reason I feel that way is that I feel the only reason Nintendo would actually do that as a remake is with the intention of hopefully again attempting at a revival of that series and throwing it at the late game Switch is sending it out to die. Even if the next system is backwards compatible, sending it out now as a late game Switch game right before a new console launch with likely like way bigger games would like, because that's what Paper Mario, Luigi's Mansion 2, like those games are safe games. Those are games that like Nintendo's like, we can put these games out and they'll still probably sell a couple million. They're not going to take a lot of work to make. And it doesn't really matter how well they sell because these series are going to continue because they're high selling series. A game like Kid Icarus, I feel like that game, if they throw it at the end of the Switch lifespan, it's to test the waters for Kid Icarus and that would kill it again. So I think that they should hold off.
Would it,
If
though?
that game exists, I think
'Cause
it would.
I just looked online. Kid Icarus Uprising on 3DS only sold 1.36 million copies. I think
I know.
I think a
But that's what
remake
I
of that
mean.
on Switch, even if it comes out at the end of this year, just say
Would do better.
it sells. It would sell that
It
and
would do
more in
better
its
than,
sleep.
but it would do better than that. But it wouldn't get the recognition it deserves. Like it's a bad time to throw it out, right? Like it's especially if Switch 2 is going to launch with like let's say a 3D Mario game, right? Like I think it's a bad time to put it out because it will sell, but it won't do what it needs to do, which is try to get
It won't make
people
new
into the
fans.
series. It won't make new fans, and I think that's why I wouldn't put it there. It's not an established enough series like Luigi, which is part of Mario, or Paper Mario. Like those games don't need to sell a ton because at the end of the day, those remakes are there for the fans. They're not there to try and like revive or bring back this series. And I feel like Kid Icarus Uprising is different. I feel like that game needs to have its own time. I think that's something that I would rather next year on the successor console than this year on the Switch. Even if it means I have to wait one full year. I think it will benefit the series more if it were to come out on the next console, not on this console.
Speaking of next console, I wanted to start talking a little bit more about like, okay, what do you think it's going to be? Do you think it's going to follow the traditional Nintendo model of every console also making Nintendo money? Or do you think they're going to throw something like, is it going to be basically using outdated or currently available, maybe slightly outdated in a year or so tech, kind of like how the Switch launched weaker than the Nvidia Shield or at the specs of the Nvidia Shield, which was outdated? Or is it going to be something more powerful? Because like I keep seeing these like laughably hilarious posts where it's like, oh, it better be at least 60 frames a second and 4K, and I'm just like, Nintendo will never do that.
It will not be. Nintendo is not trying to compete with Microsoft and Sony. This is not going to be, the tech will not be current tech. It will be older tech. It will be more powerful than Switch. It will likely still be able to output in 4K, and it'll be more powerful, but there's a reason why Nintendo has strategically at this point, like I think with the Wii U was the final straw, and I think they were always building to this. Since the Wii, they've been trying to differentiate from their competitors. And the Wii U is where they saw the opportunity. They said, okay, this console failed. The best thing we can do is cut its lifespan short so that our console releases forever moving forward are offset by our competition. Because now always their consoles will come out 2 to 3 years before their competition. And because of that, they won't be seen as competition because they're not competing with PS5 or Xbox because PS5, Xbox came out 3 years ago, so nobody's looking at it like that anymore.
Yeah.
And they don't need to compete with whatever's coming next because that's 3 to 4 years out as well. So I think they've just gotten into this cycle of like, we only need to improve on our last console. We don't need to compare ourselves to anybody else because we are not releasing our console, our tech at the same time as these other tech companies. So I think it will be more powerful than the Switch. I think it will be the least innovative Nintendo console ever.
Well, yeah, all they have to do is just give it like more RAM and a slightly better graphics card. Keep the Switch essentially the exact same as it is.
It will
Make
be
it a
the
Steam
3DS. It will be the 3DS to the DS. That's how small it will
Yeah.
be. It will be mostly a power and a visual update. Tech-wise, I'm expecting the exact same kind of gimmick.
It ain't broke, don't fix it.
Nintendo needs to nail the transition between
So
generations.
do you think Super Nintendo Switch or Nintendo Super Switch?
Super Nintendo Switch. Just like we have Super Nintendo World. The Super Nintendo, the name was just, It made it so clear that this is the better version of the NES. This is the next NES, the SNES, right? And then its abbreviation can be SNS, Super Nintendo Switch. I just think that super is a word that's synonymous with Nintendo
It
at
is,
this
yeah.
point, and
It rolls off the tongue. Super
it
Nintendo
does.
Switch.
People are going to call it that, even if it's not called that, because we've been calling it that for 2 years already in
Yeah.
like the community.
I'm hoping that the dock of the new system will be able to house both the Switch and not at the same time, but I'm saying
Or
like,
either or.
for example, yeah, like either or. So like, for example, like, and this is in the worst case scenario of like it's not backwards compatible. I would be fine if just the dock is backwards compatible, because then at least I only need to have one dock set up, and then I can just put my Switch in when I want to play Switch games, and put my Super Switch in when I want to play Super Switch games, and it's an easy transition, and
Yeah.
it's actually not that much more setup. I think it would only be an issue of like it's not compatible in the slightest. So we'll see. I'm thinking it's not going to be that big of an upgrade. I think the controllers will be more refined. They'll be more refined style of Joy-Con. I think that,
Like ergonomic, something that'll like fit your hand better.
well, no, I think they might be bigger and or just a different like shape or something. I don't even think for no other reason other than they can perfect the design, get rid of drift,
Yeah.
which will be the big thing, but also just so that they could sell more, right? Because if they just keep the Joy-Con like they have
Yeah.
now, they're not going to sell controllers, and they need to be able to sell controllers. So whatever it is will not be usable on Nintendo Switch. It will only
Yeah.
be usable on Super
Yeah.
Nintendo Switch. Just like the games will not be usable on Nintendo Switch. They'll only be usable on Super Nintendo Switch.
So the game's gonna have like a little nub at the top, like the 3DS.
Yeah, something like that most likely, or be a little bigger.
And I fully expect regular Switch Joy-Cons and the Pro Controller to be backwards compatible as well. There's no reason for them not to. Like, there are hundreds of millions of Joy-Con in the world. And for them to not be backwards compatible, I think would be a bad look. Like, having the Wii remote worked with the Wii U, I figure that the Joy-Con should work with the next system as well. Like if it's just like a feature upgrade on the new Joy-Con, if they have new Joy-Con, there's no reason for the old ones to not be backwards compatible. But one thing that I think would be a really big missed opportunity is that with the Switch we're 140 million and counting systems out in the wild, and when you're not using them but you're carrying them around, they don't do anything. For the love of God, Nintendo, bring back Street Pass.
Yes.
You have a portable machine that has Bluetooth functionality. Just let there be Street Pass. I would pay to even have that as a feature because it was so fun on 3DS.
I'll be honest with you, I disagree with you.
Why shouldn't it exist?
I will tell you exactly why I think Street Pass is a bad idea. Street Pass was fantastic for 3DS. And the reason it was great for 3DS is 3DS was one, affordable. It was a like $200-ish console. It could fit in your pocket. And it was easy to bring around. If I'm going to an event, I have that thing in my pocket. It connects to somebody, great. The reason I don't want Street Pass on Switch is because one, that system is more than double the money, so I don't want to be bringing it around everywhere I go, and I don't want to be incentivized or feel like I'm missing out because they put this feature on it where it's all about connecting and I can't even fit it in my pocket. So then now I have to put it in a bag, risk losing it. Like I don't think the Switch is small enough and it's too expensive and has too many parts on it that are expensive that I think it's a bad idea to incentivize bringing it around everywhere. I think the idea of a Switch is like you can bring it around, but it's not something you're just going to have in your pocket.
There's an easy workaround to that. Like, just have a mode or something that if you have your system docked, you can just send your friends gifts every day or something like that.
What about an app?
Or an app, yes, 100%.
Yeah, just like have free software or premium software eventually that will just allows your friends to just be more than just an icon that appears in the top left of your screen.
I
Like,
don't disagree with you.
Nintendo should gamify the friends list. Like, my whole thing with the Switch 2 is just like fix the things that you didn't fix with the Switch, and that is the eShop.
Yes.
The eShop runs like absolute
Oh god.
garbage.
Yeah,
And it's
that needs
been
an
that
update.
way since day one. The UI on the Switch. Yes, it's simplistic, but you can't create folders. You can't customize things very much. There's no themes. Like the Switch itself never got a big OS update. And that was by design. They wanted to make it quick and snappy and whatever. That's fine. But like now, if you're going to have as much RAM as the system is rumored to have and as much internal storage as it's rumored to have, like there's no reason for them to not splurge a little
Yes.
bit and give fans what they want. So like that's where I'm coming from.
I think Street Pass is something that I loved for its time. I don't want it back because I don't think you can emulate that experience, but I do believe that there's things about the Switch they need to improve.
Why
And
not
the
put a Joy-Con
three-
in your pocket and walk around with that?
Yeah, sure, maybe a Joy-Con. But again, like I
That's
feel like
a
it's
really good idea, Gino.
Yeah, put a Joy-Con in your pocket, walk around, and connect it to an app on your phone.
that's fine. I don't disagree, but I do think it changes it a little bit, right? Like because again, like the idea of the 3DS was you're taking around like a console you could be playing out there in your pocket, whereas like a Joy-Con, like I'd have to remember to put that in my pocket and like I don't know.
It could be annoying. Yeah.
Either way, I do think there's things on the Switch that like the three top things are one, what Matteo said, themes, and I think bring back Badge Arcade to do that.
Oh my god, yes.
I think the second one that they really, really need, and they've been needing for years, is Nintendo needs a stars system, as in an achievement system, and like whether they call it coins or stars or whatever. I think that would be something that benefits them, especially now because there was a time where I would have argued against it because I actually don't like the idea of achievements and trophies that much because I think it arbitrarily shapes the way you play a game. So, for example, my good friend just played Persona 3 Reload, and he literally built his entire playthrough around the idea of min-maxing everything to get a platinum on one playthrough. And, like, I think that's intrusive to your gameplay. But either way, there was a time where I was like, I don't think Nintendo should do that. But almost all Nintendo games in the Switch era had some kind of in-game achievement system. So just expand that now and just make it a universal thing. And then 3, they need full Twitch integration.
Ooh, Twitch is dying though.
Well, streaming integration, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, like every other system, I can hop on, click a button, and I'm streaming. And Switch, unfortunately, Nintendo it's very tough to do that, right? Like,
well, they don't want you to do it. That's why.
Why?
Because Nintendo is very protective of their IP. They don't want someone swearing while playing Pokemon while streaming it. That's
people do it either way.
Nintendo's just a very conservative company when it comes to stuff like that.
Those are the 3 things I would like to see from the interface. And I don't think it needs more than that. I think the worst part of the PlayStation and the Xbox is that, and I know you guys will disagree with me on this one, especially when it comes to Xbox, but God, their UIs suck. And the reason I say their UIs suck isn't because they don't look nice, isn't because they aren't good, is there's just too much menuing. What I love about my Switch is there's one thing. I go to the right, I hit all games, and all my games are there, and that's it. That's all I need to do. Whereas on Xbox, I gotta hit the dashboard and then go through a couple things, find my games and apps, and then hit all subscription and like all owned games, and then I can see all my games.
That's not true, but
and it's
whatever.
like I hate that there's that much menuing in PlayStation and Xbox, and I know it's because they have a vast amount of options.
The PS4 and the PS5 menus were awful. I do not know what anything does. I still don't even I have to push with my PS5 controller, how do I even turn this console off? It's like
you hold the button.
Yeah, I know you hold the button down, but I'm pushing the button thinking it's like Xbox or trying to find an off switch or something on there. It's just maybe this is Boomer Gino coming out. I don't know how to turn it off.
That's what I mean. Is Nintendo doesn't need all this stuff. I think that Nintendo, what they do best is being about games, not about all this other stuff. And I do think they need themes. I do think they need an achievement system or whatever. But I think the less time you spend in the menus, the better your system is.
Exactly. So that's why they got to make the eShop run better.
Yep.
Because half the time I'm in the eShop, it's just loading.
Yeah. What if I wanted to buy something? And the menu and the eShop sucks so much that I get sick and tired of it and I turn it off. And then Nintendo now doesn't have my money.
Impossible to find things, not to mention you can't add multiple things to cart. Just the other day, and I sent you guys pictures of this, Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster was on sale. So I was like, okay, I'm going to buy these games. And it was always my intention that I would own all the Final Fantasy games from 1 through 12 on Switch at some point. So I was like, okay, the next time 7, 8, 9, 10, and 12 go on sale, I'll buy them. And then I noticed, oh, they're all 60% off. I'll buy them all. And guess what I had to do? I had to go into the eShop, pick Final Fantasy 7, go through the whole menu, put in my payment, hit purchase, which took a long time because of how long it takes to load, then hit continue shopping, then go get Final Fantasy VIII and do the same thing. Instead of being able to click all of them, add them to cart and do one purchase. I had to go through each. It took me like 15 minutes to buy 5 games on the eShop.
Brutal.
That is ridiculous.
Well, I wanted to segue us kind of like, I feel like we've talked a lot about the hardware and like the
I want to
interface.
talk about one more thing with the potential
go ahead.
dock. Okay, so Switch 2, throw a lightning port or like a USB Type-C, like a really fast USB Type-C on the bottom of that potential system that you can connect to a dock, and then eventually you can sell an upgraded dock like an expansion pass that has that has an external graphics card in it. That would be great.
That's fair. I think I'll be honest with you, Gino. I think that's wishful thinking, just because of Nintendo's philosophies around like designing games around their console, like their hardware. So
Yeah.
I think by creating something like that, they kind of uproot that philosophy.
It's also like, why sell a dock upgrade when we can just sell an entire console upgrade?
Yeah, a new
like they
system.
did
Yeah,
with the OLED, right? Because there's
Yeah.
no way. The rumor is that the screen isn't an OLED screen. It's a bigger screen than the Switch OLED screen, but it's not an OLED screen. It's an LED screen, right?
that's because it's all about buy-in,
Yeah.
right? Like,
They will
and at the end of
not
the day,
sell hardware at a loss ever. They will not do that.
yeah. Well, it's not even they won't sell hardware at a loss. Like they won't do that, but it's
They
all
don't
about
want it to
like
be super expensive either.
at the level they're trying to sell, right?
Mhm.
And to who they're trying to sell. The best marketing is price. It doesn't
Yep.
matter if it's
Exactly.
$4.99 and an OLED screen. $3.99 will sell better to the average consumer than $4.99 with better tech, and
Exactly.
that's always going to be so. And their whole thing is buy-in, right? They need early adopters the way they did with Switch because they want to build. They're going to do the exact same thing they did with Switch. They finally figured it out. What sells their systems is not these innovative gimmicks. It's not like what the console is or what it looks like or what it's named. It's
Well, the name
what's
does
the
matter.
impression.
The name
The name
does
does
matter.
Terrible.
well, to a degree. Because I actually disagree with you.
Wii U.
I
Enough said.
no, it's fine. No, but listen, let me finish my point. It's not Wii U, in my opinion, did not fail because of its name. It failed because it didn't launch with anything interesting. And then by the end of year 1, nobody had bought it and people had moved on. And that's what they fixed with Switch. Switch launched with Breath of the Wild, and everybody was like, I better get that system because I got to play that game that every single reviewer, every single person online is talking about is the best game of all time. And that's what Nintendo needs to do with this system. They need to sell it with a heavy, heavy hitter that people are like, I cannot not play that game. No matter what. It doesn't matter what the system's name is. Doesn't matter what it looks like. If they launch with a game that is like 10 out of 10 great, that's it. Their games are
And
their
also,
selling point.
when you bought a Switch and when the Switch was announced, they didn't just have one game. Like, there was a game every single month for over a year.
Yeah. And this is the perfect segue.
And like when they announced the Switch, there was Mario Odyssey was already announced. You
Yeah.
had new IP. You had Splatoon
Yeah.
2. Like, it was an exciting. It was like Mario Kart was
Yeah.
came out a month after the system
Yeah.
came out.
And that's
Like,
why
there was,
this is exactly what I wanted to segue in before. And I think this is the last item, which is
Yeah.
what do you think Super Switch, what do you think its year 1 is going to look like?
if we think it's coming out in September, are you saying year 1 is September to December? Like, just at the end of that, like the launch window?
like year 1 year of the system.
All right. So I don't think there'll be a Zelda game at all
There
in the first year. I think there's going to be between September of this year and December of next year 4 big games. So one in September and one in December or November of this year, and then 2 next year. You're going to have a big summer game and a big fall game. I think at launch this year, or this year in general, is like not counting any Pokemon, because that's Pokemon Company's thing. You're launching this system with the biggest Mario push you've ever seen Nintendo do. You're launching with a 3D Mario game. And the big holiday game is Mario Kart 10 or Mario Kart 9. It's their biggest system seller, right? It's been the biggest system seller for
For the
years.
history of ever.
Like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe sold 60 plus million copies, and that was a Wii U game ported to Switch.
100%.
And if there isn't this big innovative push in terms of like new control style and all this stuff, the games and the quality of the games speak for themselves. I think the innovation is not going to be on a hardware side, it'll be on a software
On a
side. So like
software. I agree.
you'll have this crazy new racing mechanic that's never been there before. Hopefully there's an adventure mode like Diddy Kong Racing. That's my big thing that I want. But
Or
like
even a mission mode like there was in Mario Kart DS.
I think you're going to have Mario and Mario Kart this year, maybe Metroid Prime 4. Metroid Prime 4 could even slip into the spring
That might
of
be a
next year.
spring game. That might be fiscal year.
But then what I think is like the big titles for 2025, I think you're going to have Smash Bros in 2025. And then the last time, like, I don't know whether it'll be like Smash Bros would be holiday or not. I'm more inclined to say it would be holiday. I think you have a big new IP from Nintendo. I really think it's about time. Like Splatoon is the last big new IP that they had, and that came out in 2015. Next year would mark 10 years since the last like real push Nintendo had for a big IP. Like ARMS fizzled out. Like it sold really well, but Nintendo didn't do anything with it. Like ARMS had potential. Like it should have had a sequel, honestly.
Arms
on Switch,
had legs, but not anymore.
but like for a new IP, for it to have 3 million copies is impressive. But like, I think either you have a big new IP or you basically, I don't want to say reboot or reinvent, but like you have to have Donkey Kong. I think Donkey Kong is like the IP that Nintendo has that can really skyrocket up their franchise list.
Yeah.
Like
Donkey Kong
a
had no
3D
presence
Donkey
on
Kong.
Switch.
Yeah,
Whether it's
like
3D or 2D, like something Donkey Kong has to come. And I agree
Yeah.
with you. I think that's a 2025. I think year one they're gonna have 3D Mario, Metroid Prime 4, like you said, both Smash and Mario Kart, and one other big title, whether that be Donkey Kong new IP, the resurgence of something that's been dormant like Star Fox, or I'm not gonna say F-Zero because I don't think they do F-Zero within a year of Mario Kart.
there'll be another Kirby game, like a 3D
Yeah,
Kirby
there'll be a
game.
Kirby. Yeah, Kirby is also one that's on there.
Mario Sports, Animal
Fire Emblem
Crossing.
probably.
Fire Emblem, I think, is coming out next year, or even maybe this year.
Probably.
There could be a new Fire Emblem game. I
That
think
could
that
be one of the remakes.
that Fire Emblem
Yeah.
4 remake, I think, is it's done. Apparently, like it's just a matter of when you want to release it, type of thing.
Kind of like how Samus Returns was.
Like we know Next Level Games is working on a new game, so like Luigi's
That's true.
Mansion 4 probably, right?
Maybe. There's also probably Xenoblade X remake or re-release, remastered coming because there's seeds in Xenoblade 3 that suggest that the future of the series is going to build off of X. So that's probably coming next year. And I do think we're going to get like those last few Wii U games that didn't get ported over, like Xenoblade X and the Twilight Princess Wind Waker HD. I think those will be early Switch, Super Switch games. Because especially for Zelda is going to have a drought, right? Like they tried to mitigate it as much as they can by basically like spending a full year on Tears of the Kingdom after it was done, polishing it and moving on to the next game and not doing any DLC. Like they mitigated it as much as possible by basically starting the next game as early as they can. So I think the next big Zelda game's coming midway through this next system's lifespan, but they can't go 4 years without Zelda. There's going to be some re-releases, so we'll probably get Wind Waker and Twilight re-releases. Who knows? Maybe for the anniversary, they actually will like do a remake of Ocarina, or
that'd be amazing.
They could do Four Swords Adventure HD. People have been talking about, or they could do the Oracle's remakes, or something more. They could do a brand new Zelda game in the 2D style, the same way they did like Metroid Dread for Metroid. Which also there could be another 2D Metroid game coming on the horizon,
very
right?
well, yeah. Mercury Steam they're working on something new. Hopefully, it's Metroid 6 or like a remake of like Metroid Fusion or like Nintendo does it like could just re-release Zero Mission on Switch Online. Like that'd be fantastic. That's such a
Yeah,
good game.
I'm
Um,
sure the first year will be fruitful because I think that they learned that the launch is the most important thing because it doesn't matter because Wii U I will fight that Wii U had actually by year 2 had a really solid lineup of games.
I
It just
completely
didn't
But it
agree.
matter.
didn't
It
matter.
just didn't
People
matter.
had forgotten. At
Yeah,
that point, it
after
didn't matter.
the Wii U actually had a really strong start, but it just fizzled out because like okay, the first big game to come out on that system outside of launch was Pikmin 3 and that came out in like March I think or June or something like that. Like it was
It came out in July. I think it was August or
yeah.
July.
So
It was like
so it
literally like 9 months later.
so you had New Super Mario Bros. And you had Nintendo Land and then you had nothing until Pikmin 3.
But see, I
So
don't think that's a strong start. Like I actually think Wii U has the weakest.
no, like it's a fact. Like it sold, they sold like every system they had. But then once the diehards had already bought up
Yeah,
the stock,
there was nothing.
no one else
See,
bought
and
anything.
had they released it a year later with Mario 3D World, I think the Wii U would have been a different system. I think when you're because I disagree. Pikmin 3 was not the first major game. The first major game on that system was Super Mario 3D World. Like that's a system seller game.
Yeah.
Pikmin 3
Yeah.
is a niche
No, but like
throwaway.
it was the
Like
biggest thing. It was like the first game of note.
yes, the
Like
first game of note. But the first time they had a major game was a year later, right? And
yeah,
they'll
it's like with
never
the
make that
3DS
mistake
where
again.
like the 3DS shouldn't have come out when it did because it didn't have any games. Like the first big game to come out on 3DS was Ocarina 3D, and that was again months after the system came out. So
Yeah.
just like it's gonna be really cool because like if we want to believe the rumors about backwards compatibility, the physical and digital backwards compatibility, plus also there's rumors about the new hardware enhancing Switch games. There's going to be potentially so much stuff to play, even if you don't buy any games, like just from what you already have. And like, I really think Nintendo's going to push NSO because they're going to want people to sub to that when they're on the new system. There could even be some sort of like early adopter bonus or something like that. Nintendo's pretty good with things like that. Like with look at what they did with 3DS. They gave you Four Swords anniversary for free, and then on Switch there's Tetris 99, there's F-Zero, F-Zero 99. Like there's these games that you have just for having the online subscription. And just like when we boot the new system up, we would have access to 100 plus games. And that's never been that way with a Nintendo system ever, unless you had a large physical library of games. So it's going to be really, really awesome to have like the experience I had with my Xbox and my PlayStation, like with Nintendo. They're finally going to get to that because Furukawa, the president of Nintendo, said your Nintendo account is going to be very, very important. Like they Nintendo knows that they cannot remove that now because so many people have put thousands of dollars into digital games. So just it's really encouraging. Like if you read a lot of the stories and the interviews that come out when they do like their shareholders meetings and things like that, if you start to compile things, you can sort of get an understanding of where their thoughts are. And I think where they're handling backward, like I think it's really obvious that backwards compatibility is a thing just based on those interviews alone. So I'm so excited for what's coming out.
Well, I think that that pretty much does it. So lots of exciting things. If there's some notable stuff in the partner showcase, we might have a reaction video. We'll probably have one or a breakdown. We'll definitely have one for Pokemon, unless again there's nothing noteworthy. And then definitely for the console launch, we'll have a breakdown and we'll go over that. Assuming we don't need to have a good night's rest that night to wake up at 4 a.m. to go get
Yep.
the pre-orders. So, well, anyway, that brings us to the end of today's episode. If you liked what you heard today, hit that like, subscribe, or follow button. If you want to contribute to the conversation, let us know any ideas for upcoming episodes or just share your thoughts. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think the Nintendo system is going to look like or what you think might be in these directs or Pokemon Presents. And otherwise, we'll see you next time at the Hub. Mateo, I believe you have a word for our friends at Microsoft.
Microsoft, make a new Banjo game and port it to the next Nintendo system. See you, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.